going to be a person of wisdom, if you're going to be a person of wisdom, you have to be willing to love your enemies and to hate your friends. Your enemies will come to you and say something true to you. If you're going to be a person of wisdom, you have to be willing to accept what your enemies say to you. Even grudgingly, it's okay to twist your foot and go, shut up. But then you know it's true, so you accept it, I guess you can do that. But also the same thing, just because your friends come to you, you've got to be willing to hate them. And not in the sense of like hate them, but to realize that their friends are going to lie to you. Why? Because they have a vested interest sometimes and not telling you the truth. And that's neat if you have those people around you who can come to you and say, I think you're wrong about this. And you don't get butthurt about it because you realize they're telling you because they want you to be better. They want the world to see you the way that they see you. They want you to be somebody who other people admire because they admire you. They want other people to be fair towards you because they love you. So I'm glad that we have this thing about country, group, so that it's not just limited to just the one. We even have like the political group. So are school shootings okay or not? Is assassination okay or not? If these things are good, well then we should hope for more of them, I guess. But we all intuitively know that these things are really bad, but yet we find ourselves defending it on these grounds. So for example, earlier when I was talking about my Muslim friend and I, where we go back and forth, like, hey, what's up with your people? What's up with your people? It's almost like we want to make sure that he's not offended by that before we're sure if it's okay to laugh or not. Is it funny or is it not? Are things funny or are they not? And then we say, well, it depends on a lot. I mean, there's a lot that's going to be going into that then, man. And then, by the way, how many have to find it funny? Do I need to take a poll of the world's 1.6 billion Muslims to find out whether or not he and I doing that is funny? Or the fact that it's okay with him, is that enough? And you see how we start doing this math and it becomes completely disingenuous. And a lot of it is because we don't have anything to appeal to except for, I'm trying to think of a way to transition this, that we don't have a way to appeal to it except through values. And when we say, for example, you're not to be so blind with patriotism that you can't face reality, notice he's not saying that patriotism is a bad thing, because patriotism is a love for your country. Now, why would you love a country? And you might think, oh, it's just because that's where I'm from. That's an expression of narcissism. That's all that is. I'm from there, so therefore I love it. Rather than looking at it and go, are there better and worse countries? And if there are better and worse countries, what makes them better and worse? In fact, a question that almost none of us, I imagine, ever really think about, what makes a country a country? Is it, well, we got borders. Is that it? That's what makes a country a country? And I would suggest to you it's more than just that. It's the values that are espoused by that country. Not every country has the same values. The thing is, for example, what is it that makes the United States the United States? You might think like, oh, well, the United States is very wealthy. Okay, true. Why is the United States so wealthy? And you might say, oh, because of look at all the natural resources the United States has. Other countries have massive natural resources. What is it about those countries that they can't actually exploit them and take advantage of them and become wealthy? There's a reason that the United States becomes the United States. There's a reason that France stays France. There's a reason that China is China. And I would suggest to you it comes down to this thing called values. For example, if we have this value in the United States, the First Amendment. Now, understand that the First Amendment is not, well, actually any of the Constitution. It isn't that the government gives us the right to free speech. It's that the government recognizes that we have a right to free speech. Now, where does that right come from? Now, in fact, I just recently heard this from a sitting U.S. senator. A sitting U.S. senator made a reference to people, like Charlie Kirk, he said, who believe, this is an old clip, who believe that rights come from God. And he says, these people who want a theocracy because they believe that rights come from God. This guy's a lunatic. He's the same kind of a lunatic as Thomas Jefferson, who wrote that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed with certain, and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So the founding fathers believe that the rights aren't given by government, that there's a God, and that we have rights because those rights are given to us by God, not from government. And then he goes on to explain that the purpose of government is to protect those rights. So this is a sitting U.S. senator who doesn't seem to know the Declaration of Independence or where this whole idea of natural rights comes from. So I guess what I'm saying is this. The United States has a tradition of free speech. Why? Because the government believes it's good? No, it's there because the government doesn't always believe that it's good and that it has to be protected. Why does that become so important? Because then we can talk about ideas. Because as we've seen recently, if we're not talking, we're punching. If we're not talking, we're shooting. If we're not talking, we're not even arguing. We completely will separate and divide out. And if that happens, well, there's no hope, there's no future for it. In other words, the foundational principle, the foundational value is that we hold these truths to be self-evident. In other words, they don't even need to be argued. It's so obvious to us that all men are created equal. Everyone's created equal. Now here's the funny thing. People will look at that and they'll hold their arms and scratch their chins and go, what about slavery? Yeah, what about slavery? All men. Does it say some? Does it say a few? Does it say most of? All are created equal and are endowed with certain and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Why is it that slavery has to end? Because there's an absolute obvious contradiction that's there. So does that mean that therefore the founding principle is not true? No, it means that everything that doesn't correspond to that has to go. We realize it's a contradiction. So like with free speech, why is free speech important? It's not just because it helps us to share ideas, blah, blah. It's because it's a right that we have by virtue of the fact that we're alive. And as soon as you don't recognize that as a national value, there's the disconnect. There's the problem. Because we no longer share that value. People who will say, no, you have a right to speech except when it doesn't correspond to what I think. Then you should be killed or imprisoned or canceled or shut down or whatever. And then we have a disagreement about the values, the principles. You shouldn't be so blind with patriotism that you look at a country like the United States when it has slavery and say, we should keep it. Why? Because that's what it is. That's what we have. No, you should look at your country and go, oh man, slavery. You guys ever feel like we shouldn't be doing that? You know, the whole owning people. Why not? I was doing some reading over the weekend, and Thomas, you wrote this. You said, I want to get the wording of it correct, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I feel like you wrote that. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't have that then. Rather than just, no, but we should keep it because that's blind patriotism. That's blind fidelity to a group, blind loyalty to a group. You should be able to look at it and go, that doesn't correspond with our principles. Conversely, what does that also mean? It means that our country fights a war and over 100,000 people die fighting against that. The first country in the Western world to actually abolish slavery, one of the first countries in the world to abolish slavery. And people die for that value. Do we then therefore go, don't matter, still evil, still wicked, still terrible? What about every other country in the world that exists right now where there wasn't abolished that way? What about the countries that still have it? It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. Because we recognize that life is a process of maturing. And that's for us as individuals. It's for us, hopefully, within our groups. It's hopefully us within our countries. That every day, hopefully in every way, we get a little bit better. And hopefully as quickly as possible. But to be so blind to patriotism or loyalty to our group or loyalty to our families or loyalty to whatever, that we can't face reality. That's the problem, man, because then we're standing against reality. A true friend stabs you in the front. It's your enemies who stab you in the back. And we have to be careful with this thing of not being able to face reality, because if you're going to be a person of wisdom, if you're going to be a person of wisdom, you have to be willing to love your enemies and to hate your friends. Meaning that your enemies will come to you and say something true to you. If you're going to be a person of wisdom, you have to be willing to accept what your enemies say to you. Even grudgingly, it's okay to twist your foot and go, shut up. But then it's true, so you accept it, I guess you can do that. But also the same thing, just because your friends come to you, you've got to be willing to hate them. And not in the sense of hate them, but to realize that their friends are going to lie to you. Why? Because they have a vested interest sometimes in not telling you the truth. But, that's neat if you have those people around you who can come to you and say, I think you're wrong about this. And you don't get butthurt about it, because you realize they're telling you because they want you to be better. They want the world to see you the way that they see you. They want you to be somebody who other people admire because they admire you. They want other people to be fair towards you because they love you. Now, that's not the person, of course, in your life who will say things just to tear you down. You can know the difference between that. And then also to be that person in other people's lives as well, so that you can tell the truth, so that you can stab your friends in the front, so that your friends don't have to decide between hating you but actually being able to hear you out. But of course, like I began by saying, that's if we're going to be a person of wisdom. We aren't all committed to that. So wrong is wrong, man. No matter who does it. Someone lies, it's wrong, man. Yeah, but that's my side. Yeah, it's like, I think I mentioned in the last class, wherever you sit politically, is immaterial to me. But we had this thing going on in California years ago, the whole Black Lives Matter thing. And we had people saying we need to elevate black voices, elevate black voices. You need to sit down and shut up and listen to black people. And at the same time, we have a recall election. And the people of California are faced between voting for the wealthy white dude who comes from wealth, Gavin Newsom, who owns restaurants, which, by the way, when he shuts down the rest of the state, he keeps his own restaurants open, he goes to his own parties, hangs out with his own friends, is photographed doing it while he's telling other people you can't say goodbye to loved ones in intensive care units, you can't attend funerals. A friend of mine's son overdosed on heroin and he couldn't have a funeral for him because it was during the COVID thing. But that dude decides to keep it open, his own stuff open. We have a vote between that dude and Larry Elder, a black dude from South Central Los Angeles, became a lawyer, entirely self-made. So who do we vote for? The wealthy white person or the self-made black person? And California votes for the wealthy white person. Why? Well, because he's on our side. Is he though? Is he? I don't know, man. The trees are almost always going to vote for the axe just because it looks like them. Is the axe their friend? No. What he did, what Newsom did, was it wrong? I think objectively we can all agree and say yes, whether you agree with him politically or not. So then why not just replace him with somebody else then who represents the party better? Maybe it seems like it would make sense, but instead we just go, no, we'll support him anyway. Why? Patriotism, loyalty to group, not principles. And that's what I'm getting at. That when the group violates your values, when the group violates their principles, it's time to hate your friends. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Yes, that's right.